Hey guys, I am back with another video. I was scrolling through my subscription feed the other day and I saw Lala from Books in Lala do the 2015 book survey, and I thought that it was a really interesting way to look at your year in reading, so I decided to do it as well, and I will link her video down below in the description so you guys can go check out her video as well. Okay, if you see me looking down, it's because I have my notebook with all the questions written on it, and there are 18 questions, so let's just get started. Okay, question number 1. How many books did you read and did you meet your goal? Yes, I met my goal. I set my goal for 100 books for the year, which is higher than I've ever had it set before, but I was feeling ambitious, and I ended up reading a total of 101 books. So I was able to meet my goal and go over by one, which I was extremely excited about. Okay, question 2. Most read genre. My most read genre, basically the only one that I read, was young adult. I'm not quite sure of the breakdown within the young adult, like fantasy, contemporary type thing. I think it was all pretty even, but I didn't read any adult fiction this year. It was all young adult. Most read author. My most read author this year was Rachel Caine. I read her entire Morganville Vampire series this year, start to finish, and that has 15 books in it. And I reread the first half, and then I read the last few books, which I hadn't yet read, to complete out the series. And yeah, so 15 books. So she was my most read author. Longest and shortest books you read. My longest book was Winter, and it's 824 pages long. And my shortest book was Lumberjanes issue 1 and issue 2, I guess, because they were both the same length. They're both 24 pages, and I didn't like either of them. So my longest book ended up being my favorite book of the year, which if you've read Winter, it's probably not a surprise. Favorite book published in 2015, Winter by Marissa Meyer. I loved that book. I loved that series, and I'm so sad that it's over. I just want more from the characters. So I'm really looking forward to when Stars Above comes out. I know it's just the novellas, but it still takes place in that world, so really excited we're at least getting that. My favorite book not published this year, and that would have to be City of Heavenly Fire by Cassandra Clare. I finally finished the Mortal Instruments series this year, and I loved it. It was so good. City of Heavenly Fire was amazing and totally lived up to my expectations. A book that lived up to the hype. With this one, I'm going to have to say Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I put off reading it. I bought it almost immediately after it came out because it was one of my most anticipated reads of the year. And then I put off reading it until this month. And I loved that book. It was one of my favorites of the year. And it totally lived up to all of the hype that it was getting. Everybody said that it was amazing and that the story was so good, and they were right. The story was amazing. It was so good. I loved it. Totally lived up to the hype. Okay, a book that did not live up to the hype. Lumberjanes. I only read the single issues, 1 and 2, and I had such high expectations going into those because everybody said that it was such a good, like, comics graphic novel series. I hated it. I struggled to read 24 pages in the second issue. It was so bad. The characters all annoyed me. Nothing was realistic. It was not done well at all. I don't recommend. Favorite character. This one I kind of struggled with a bit. I went back and forth between a few characters, but I finally settled on Katie from Illuminae. I loved her so much when I was reading Illuminae. She's so badass. She's going to do whatever it takes to make sure that she survives, and I admire that in a character. It was so cool seeing the things she did in Illuminae. It was amazing. If you haven't read Illuminae, stop what you're doing, go out, buy the book, read it. You won't regret it, I promise. Least favorite character. This one I struggled with because there wasn't a character that I hated out of the books that I read this year, but I ended up going with the Commissar from The Heart of Betrayal by Mary E. Pearson, which is the second book in the Remnant Chronicles. And I don't like him. He's shady and not a nice guy. I didn't like anything he did in the book. I was not a fan. If you've read the book, you probably understand where I'm coming from. I just don't like him. He's not a likable villain. I didn't like him. Okay, next question. A book with a shocking plot twist. For me, some of the books I read, I could see the plot twist kind of coming, so I knew what was going to happen, or I could at least guess at what was going to happen. With The Red Queen by Victoria Aveyard, I did not see what happened at the end of that book coming. It took me by total surprise. I had no idea. I was reading it, and then this plot twist happens, and I'm just like, wait a minute, where did that come from? What's going on? So I'm really interested to see where things go in book 2 because that plot twist was crazy. Favorite adaptation. I didn't see a ton of adaptations this year, actually. The only one that I saw, I'm pretty sure the only one I even saw in theaters was Mockingjay Part 2, and that one's my favorite. I thought that they did a really good job with it. I've been a fan of all of the Hunger Game movies, and I thought that they did well with all of them. Catching Fire remains my favorite movie, but Mockingjay Part 2 was really amazing as well. What book made you cry the most? I didn't actually cry reading any of the books that I read this year, which is surprising because usually I cry at least once, but this year I did not. I did tear up, however, at the end of This Is Where It Ends by, bear with me because I'm going to butcher this name, Marieke Nijkamp. I totally said that wrong. I got a arc of this through NetGalley, and I read it back in August, and it was such an amazing book. I really liked it a lot. The ending had me tearing up, not crying, but I teared up, and I highly recommend reading this when it comes out. I can't remember the date on the top of my head, but I'll put it down in the description so that you guys can check it out and pick it up when it comes out because I highly recommend it. What book made you laugh the most? Okay, I read the last 4 Percy Jackson books this year for the first time, and I was laughing through all of them. That series is so much fun. I love it so much. I don't remember laughing throughout a lot of books, but definitely those ones. Those books are just phenomenal. I love them. New favorite author you discovered this year. For me, that was Holly Black. I hadn't read anything by her prior to this year, and then this year I read The Coldest Girl in Cold Town and The Darkest Part of the Forest, and I loved both of those books. And I will be picking up and reading more of her books in 2016 because the two I read were just so good. Her writing is amazing, and I really like the characters that she creates. We're almost done. We're on question 16. Guilty pleasure read of the year. I don't really have guilty pleasure reads. I just read whatever I want to read and don't care what other people think. But I had to pick a book, so I went with The Air. It was a pretty controversial book. A lot of people didn't want it to even be a thing. So I just went with that one. I liked it. It was okay. And I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in The Crown when it comes out. Oh, and that's by Kira Cass. Question 17. Favorite book you reread this year? This one's a tie for me between City of Bones by Cassandra Clare and Glass Houses by Rachel Caine. Both are the first books in two of my favorite series, and I loved them so much more reading them again. And I can't recommend either of those series enough. And the last question is, were you happy with your reading year, and what will you do differently in 2016? Well, I'm making a whole separate video on what I'm going to be doing with my reading in 2016, so I won't answer that part of the question because that's going to be posted on here tomorrow. So, were you happy with your reading year? I was very happy with my reading year. Hello, phone. I was extremely happy when I hit the 100 book mark because I didn't know if I was going to be able to do it. I moved a few times this year. My work schedule changed. It was just crazy. I was so busy this year. I didn't think I was going to hit that 100 books. But I guess I read enough in the beginning of the year that not reading as much at the end of the year didn't matter. I am happy with the books that I read. I'm happy that I finished some series that I really had been wanting to finish. I can't think of anything that I would change from my reading year this year. I discovered some new authors. I rediscovered old favorites. I finished series that I had been putting off for forever and finally was able to cross them off my TBR. I read a bunch of new releases, which was one of my goals. I met not all, but most of my 2015 reading goals, which was pretty amazing. And I'm really happy with the way the year went, reading-wise. And like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I am going to be making my 2016 reading goals video immediately after this. And so that will be up tomorrow. And I will see you in that video. Bye!